Eli gets the green bean. What's the good word, Eli?
Chillin'. I just tried to ping Jeremy back into this room. Jeremy's an old friend of mine, and he just joined Clubhouse, so I hope he joins us today, too. Excited to
Right
get started
on.
on these headlines. How's your Tuesday?
It's a slow. It's one of those. How do you say rocky Tuesday? Not like bad. It was just like one of those. You got like mosquitoes. They're not like nobody's stinging you like a bee, and it's really annoying. But it's just more like It's like trying to get through everything today, and like the alerts going off, phones ringing, everything. How about you?
Hey, Peter.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, so Elliot, I'm going to invite you on up. All right, we're about to just start the show here, and we're going to go into the countdown. And Eli, so we will just be starting just a second here. All right.
Hey,
Awesome.
Peter.
And-
I just wanted to say hello. I just want to say a quick hello. I can't.
All right, so the show is about to start. We're in the countdown. All right, welcome to the Music News Power on the Music Industry City Broadcast Network. And today we are going to be talking about Morrissey versus the Simpsons, the Live Nation Antitrust, festival test events, music business gaming, UK musicians call to fix streaming, and what's a day without your daily Spotify update? It's Tuesday, and we have a lot to discuss first. But first, let's welcome my co-host, Eli Window. Eli, hey, how you doing?
Hey, Peter. It's good to see you. And Peter and I can see each other. We are streaming not just audio, but video. So, hi. It's good to see you and hear you.
Likewise. So, how's your day kicking off? Did you take a look at what we have on the deck for the news?
This is a big day.
It is a big day.
It's definitely a big day. Let's go ahead and get started. What do you say?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off with this day in history?
All right, we're going to get started. I'm going to read off some really cool fun facts about this day in history. But first, let us just give you a quick rundown of how the room works. This is the Music News Power Hour through Music Industry City. We're going to read aloud some headlines about music that we find across the World Wide Web that we think are important, and we think you might too. After we read some of the headlines, we're also going to open the floor so that you can raise your hand and join our discussion if there's anything that you'd like to comment on about any of the headlines that we've been reading, or if there's a headline that you feel like we missed and you want to speak to us about it, please raise your hand. We'll bring you up in the back half of the show and have an open table discussion. But kicking off today, let's look at this day in history. We remember today from 2018, Swedish DJ, remixer, record producer Avicii died, age 28. He was nominated for a Grammy for a Best Dance Recording with Levels at the 2013 Grammy Awards. His biggest single was 2013's Wake Me Up in Memory. Birthdays today, American singer and songwriter Luther Vandross. Happy birthday. Born on this day, 1972. American actress, model, and singer Carmen Electra from the Pussycat Dolls. Born on this day, 1973. Gabry Ponte, Italian DJ, remixer, record producer from Eiffel 65. Of course, 1999 UK #1 single, Blue Dabadi. Moving on this day in history, April 20th, 1987, a record store in Callaway, Florida was forced to close down, and a part-time clerk was arrested after selling a copy of To Live Is What We Are by Two Live Crew to a 14-year-old boy. Officials had deemed the recording, quote-unquote, obscene because of its pornographic lyrics, and there was a huge hullabaloo at the record store. On this day, 2002, in dispute over who owned the rights to Nirvana's recordings, former members Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic asked a Seattle court to prove that Courtney Love was indeed mentally stable. They told the court that Courtney Love was irrational, mercurial, self-centered, unmanageable, inconsistent, and unpredictable. They also claimed a contract was invalid because Love was, quote-unquote, stoned at the time of signing. On this day, 2006, Baby Shambles singer Pete Doherty was arrested in East London on suspicion of drug possession only hours after a court appearance. He had earlier admitted to 7 charges of possessing drugs when he appeared before magistrates in East London. He was given a community order with 2 years supervision and 18 months drug rehabilitation, and was also banned from driving for 6 months. Rough day. And that's it for this day in history. I just have to say that I think it's great that on today, April 20th, when so many of my neighbors have taken the day off work to sit outside on their porches, it's cracking me up that Courtney Love, the courts were asked to deem her mentally stable, even though she was stoned when she signed a contract.
She was stoned when she
How
signed
fitting.
the. Yes, exactly. That's perfect.
Isn't that like saying she was there?
They were lucky enough that she actually showed up if she was there in person. Yeah. So, yeah, we've seen the best and worst from her. I have to say, the song This Day in History is with the birthday was like Blue, ba ba dee ba doo da. But now that's going to be stuck in my head all day. So thank you for that.
That's infectious. It really is.
Right on. Earwormed. All right. So let's get right into the news. All right, I'm kicking off the news. And again, if you want to follow along with the headlines, we have all the headlines and links to those headlines in the show notes. You can go to musicindustrycity.com and you can click on the Clubhouse Information Center graphic. Scroll to the bottom, or there's also a button up there, and you'll find the show notes that has all the information that we have that we cover throughout the week. And we leave that up. We reset it only on Mondays, so we have all the articles that we talk about stay in there. You can follow along, and it goes to the week in review on Friday, which we have a lot of fun with. So kicking things off, this one is from digitalmusicnews.com, and the title is Guitarist John Schaefer is first Capitol Hill insurrectionist to plead guilty. The article starts off, Iced Earth guitarist John Schaefer has pled guilty to storming the Capitol on January 6th. He is the first insurrectionist to enter 2 guilty pleas after appearing in a federal court. He was charged with felony counts of obstruction of an official proceeding and entering and remaining in a restricted building with a deadly weapon. Schaefer wore a hat that professed him to be a lifetime member of the far-right militia group, the Oath Keepers. Federal investigators are conducting an ongoing investigation into other Capitol insurrectionists. FBI Director Chris Wray says it is the most extensive investigation conducted since the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001. During the insurrection, Schaefer wore a tactical vest and carried bear spray at the head of the crowd. Later, he says he used bad judgment in participating in the insurrection. And it goes on with the quote, Schaefer admitted to being among the first individuals to push past the damaged doors and into the Capitol building, forcing officers to retreat, reads an official Justice Department press release. Continues, Schaefer and others advanced toward 5 or 6 backpedaling USCP officers while members of the mob swelled inside of the Capitol and overwhelmed the officers. The officers ultimately deployed a chemical irritant to disperse the mob. So John Schaefer has described himself as a lifetime member of the Oath Keepers. 12 other members of the extremist militia have been charged with conspiracy to carry out attacks on the Capitol. Despite the guilty plea, John Schaefer has not been charged yet. So this is in Digital Music News. All right. And this one here, if anybody has any comments, questions, or not necessarily, questions, if you have any thoughts on it, you want to react to anything, raise your hand. Feel free to join the conversation as we are reading out the articles. And we also, at the second half, we do have the round table where you can bring anything to the table, or it's something that we might have missed in the news that you'd like to discuss. So this one is in Consequence of Sound. We had to have a little fun with this. Is Morrissey's manager blasts The Simpsons for portraying him as an overweight racist? Again, this is in the show notes. So Morrissey has unloaded on The Simpsons for a recent episode parodying the former Smiths singer. And in an update, Morrissey, a follow-up Facebook post, Morrissey manager Pete Katzis said he was the only one issued the initial post criticizing The Simpsons. Meanwhile, Morrissey has issued a statement of his own. Sunday's title entitled Panic on the streets of Springfield saw Lisa become obsessed with the British singer named Quilloughby, whose likeness and persona was inspired by Morrissey. Lisa discovers Quilloughby and his band, The Snuffs, on a streaming service and immediately becomes enthralled with their band of literate, sardonic music and his militant vegetarianism. Quilloughby, who was voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, soon appears in Lisa's life after imaginary form, albeit his 1980s self. So it goes on. A statement that Morrissey posted official Facebook page following the airing of the episode blasted The Simpsons for trying, quote, to capitalize on cheap controversy and expounding on vicious rumors. When a show stoops so low to use harshly hateful tactics like showing the Morrissey character with his belly hanging out of his shirt, when it never looked like that at any point in his career, it makes you wonder who the real hurtful racist group is here, the statement opined. Quote, continues, even worse, calling the Morrissey character out for being racist without pointing out any specific instances offers nothing. It only serves to insult the artist. There's more updates here, and then Morrissey has issued his own statement, with briefly flirts with the idea of taking legal action over a parody before acknowledging that such a lawsuit requires more funding than I could possibly muster in order to make a challenge. Neither do I have a determined business squad of legal practitioners ready to pounce. So I don't know. Is it libel? Can he go at them for slander? This is, something. Where does comedy change? Where does it draw the line? Where does it cross the line?
Well, from a legal standpoint, parody is 100% legal in all instances. That's pretty much all I have to add to that.
I think he's just a bit butthurt. Is that still a word we use?
It is Morrissey.
I love that you just said that. Yeah, I love that you just said that word. Yes.
I mean, how many times should we complain that Morrissey canceled a concert last minute? If he even showed up to the concert. All right. Moving on to Variety. The U.S. representatives penned a letter urging Biden to investigate Live Nation's Ticketmaster monopoly. So this comes out as 5 members of the United States House of Representatives have signed a letter urging President Joe Biden to launch an investigation into the Live Nation Ticketmaster merger, which they call a monopoly. So numerous Democrats here sent the letter on Monday to Attorney General Merrick Garland and Rebecca Slaughter, the acting chair of the Federal Trade Commission. Quote, we write in support of strong antitrust enforcement by the Biden administration, including the live event ticket sales marketplace. The letter begins. Continues, the evidence is overwhelming that the 2010 merger between the world's largest concert promoter, Live Nation, and the biggest ticket provider, Ticketmaster, has strangled competition in live entertainment ticketing and harmed consumers and must be revisited. The letter goes on to state that Live Nation Entertainment, quote, holds more than 80% of the venue ticket sales market, which the members of Congress refer to as an unfair and deceptive practice in the industry. The letter alleges that the Department of Justice had previously found Live Nation Entertainment to have violated the Department of Justice consent decree, quote, by threatening venues and forcing the bundling of artists with ticket services. The letter also mentions that L&E has cornered the ticket reselling market through its creation of SafeTix, which is marketed as a tool to curb ticket fraud, but which the representatives allege has also been used to ensure that tickets can only be resold within that system, deeming tickets acquired from other reselling platforms invalid. This goes on, and it has the letter in its entirety. If you want to check that out, it is in Variety. It's also listed in our show notes at musicindustrycity.com. So, this was a big concern when they were making the merger, and, they were the big divider. The wall that was put between them was just saying that they weren't allowed to share certain data with each other when that merger took place in 2010. And that was how they got away with any kind of antitrust. Any thoughts on this?
Just that the headline doesn't have again in it. It just seems like this comes up every couple of years that, and part of me wants to think that as certain senators have their nieces and nephews come of age and try and get concert tickets, and then the parents complain to said senator, and they look into it again, and it just seems like it's something that just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it was.
Did they say
Go on,
Do they
Greg.
say what services they're bundling? Because the monopoly is not necessarily illegal, but when you start bundling services and forcing your way into other markets,
It
that's
did.
what happened to Microsoft. So
Right.
that could be problematic and actionable, spoken by a non-lawyer who doesn't know much.
It didn't list like the specifics on that. It was more about the bigger picture of it, so they didn't lay that all out as a line item. Okay, so let's go on to live events here, and this one is happening in the UK, and this is from Mixbag.net. A 5,000 capacity, non-socially distanced festival is being trialed in the UK. The event will be held in Liverpool's Sefton Park on May 2nd. The article starts off, the non-socially distant outdoor music festival with 5,000 people in attendance is to be set to be trialed. The event is being organized by Festival Republic, promoter of events such as Latitude Wireless and Reading and Leeds festivals, and will take place at the Grade 1 listed Sefton Park in Liverpool on May 2nd. The event is being held as part of the government's Event Research Program, which is the ERP, which is studying the viability of reopening the events industry safely with a number of pilot test events. Prior to the arrival, ticket holders will be required to produce a negative COVID-19 rapid lateral flow test at the local testing center, with these facilities set to be trialed as a means to reopen large-scale events. Vaccine passports are not being trialed at the event. Once on site, attendees will not be required to wear face masks or maintain social distancing. Scientists will be studying the pilot by, quote, looking to see if and how crowds mixing outdoors increases the risk of transmission of COVID-19. So, it goes on some deeper things. So, any thoughts on this? Because I'd also like to tie this into something else. Is from Polestar, and this one came out today. It says test events in the Netherlands canceled over hospital petition. And this article goes on to say when Field Events announced a 10,000 capacity pilot festival as part of its Back to Live initiative, a surgeon at the local hospital launched a petition that has made the authorities call the event off. Scheduled for April 24th, the Origin Festival, promoted by Dutch radio station 538, was supposed to welcome 10,000 visitors at Chasfield in the Netherlands. Guests were required to test for coronavirus beforehand as well as afterwards, with vulnerable groups excluded from participation. Tickets had sold out in no time. More than 1 million had applied for a ticket during pre-registration, according to the website. The idea of 10,000 people gathering didn't sit well with Roger Krolla, surgeon at the close-by Amphia Hospital, who launched a petition that described the planned test and event as, quote, a blow to patients and caregivers. The goal of the petition which was to get authorities to, quote, cancel this ill-considered pseudo-experiment, has been reached after more than 375,000 people signed. All right, the mayor of Breda decided not to grant a permit for the pilot, fearing, quote, increasing social unrest. He said the local police had been expecting supporters and opponents of the country's corona policy, as well as Field Lab's Back to Live initiative, quote, with all the associated security risks. So this is the only other 10,000 capacity test event that was part of Field Lab's test, the May 1st one, reportedly got canceled in as well. So you have one area that is saying, hey, let's test this out, and another one saying, no, don't test it out. Thoughts on this?
I just think that the response, the radically different response, is really interesting. We heard about a festival in Australia that was canceled over one positive COVID test because that's part of their policy and the way that they respond to COVID there. I think that the response, the differences in the response and the differences in the sentiment about bringing back concerts is just radically different from place to place, and it's very interesting, the differences.
So I have some unique insight on this specific one because a very good friend of mine is actually the tour manager and guitar tech for Blossoms, which is the headlining act on the Liverpool event in 2 weeks' time. I spoke with him about it this morning, which is why I wanted to definitely make sure to get in today because the insight that I have is quite interesting. He's having a COVID test done this weekend and one done next weekend. But aside from that, there have been no plans to vaccinate crew or band members. There have been no plans to necessarily exact any sort of quarantine measure prior to the event itself, aside from those tests that have been given, that are being given not only to the attendees, but to obviously talent and crew. And he promised to give me a full rundown after the fact, so I can give you guys sort of a report on, what's happened as a result and what he's required to do in the way of track and trace. But the culture here is so very much, get on with it, is very much sort of built into the culture. And the propensity to get back to outdoor live events, especially festivals, there's such a massive pull for it because there are so many. And it being sort of done in Liverpool is probably no accident, because they were one of the areas where there was a high concentration quite early on in the lockdown, where they had to have their own separate isolated satellite lockdowns for quite some time. So I think the thinking is that many of the people there, if they're not vaccinated, they've got antibodies because of their having had the illness. And it's quite an isolated community, in that they're very close to one another in Liverpool. People stay in Liverpool, in other words. They're a very community based city, and it's not massive. So I would imagine it's the ideal space to do this kind of thing. So I'll keep you guys posted once I get follow up from after the event.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Please do keep us posted. I'm really interested to hear.
I mean, and while I support these experimental events because they're going to be monitored and watched, on the other hand, like, what's the bar for continuing to begin to do events? I mean, if places are going to have, zero, I want to see zero cases, like Byron Bay, one positive test for a music festival, and they shut the whole thing down. Like, we're going to be dealing with this for, a decade if the bar is set at eradication, like full eradication, zero cases. Like, we may never get that. So there's got to be some sort of I don't know about international consensus. Maybe that's asking too much, but what level do we get at that we're comfortable going back to doing things?
Right.
like,
And to that point, Elliot, if we're looking for total eradication before these large scale events and concerts can come back, we have to be fair and realize that we haven't reached total eradication, and so many other industries have opened, at least to limited capacity. Even large scale events, sporting events, are starting to come back. And so we're not seeing complete eradication for other industries to reopen. So it's a great point.
yeah, which
We had a
In their defense, though, like, most other industries don't rely on the concept. Like, our entire business model is get as many people as humanly possible into whatever space we're given. So
Right.
we are
Make them stand.
somewhat of an outlier. I do see both sides of the argument.
We just had an event here at Wembley. It was an FA Cup semi-final, and each of the football clubs were allowed to invite 2,000 fans, to a total of 4,000 in Wembley Stadium, which capacity is upwards of 90 plus thousand, if memory serves. So it was definitely socially distanced and partially outdoors, because it's an open top venue, but it's obviously enclosed like a bowl shape. So hopefully, if we get decent results from that, which happened just at the weekend, it'll be just flush up against this event that's happening 1st of May. And if we had those two back to back, at least in the capacity of the 5,000 range, outdoors or semi-outdoors might be the way forward for next steps.
And I'm sure there's more news to get to, but if I could add to that, I have a friend that works for Live Nation in the Madison Square Garden box office. And, not too long ago, she was invited to join a bunch of people at one of the Knicks games at the 10% capacity. And the game was a real exciting game. It went down to the last second. The Knicks won with a buzzer beater. And she said that under normal situations, the garden would have exploded. And just being in that room with that few people for that type of event, she went home and cried. And she's not necessarily a sports person. She's a concert goer. We go to shows together. She used to work at my theater in the box office. And she just said, I don't want to be a part of events like that. It's just not right.
That almost feels like performing in a closed venue, or going to a closed venue for a concert. That's definitely strange and Thanks for pointing that out. I think anybody who loves concerts would find that just a little bit eerie. Sporting events, any large events, someone would find that eerie if they enjoyed the roar of the crowd, like a lot of us do. But before we move on to the next headline, I want to quickly reset the room. Welcome to the Music News Power Hour to everyone who is speaking on the stage. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening in to everyone in the Clubhouse room and also on our streaming platforms. We are streaming live across all platforms, audio and video. So even if you're not on Clubhouse, you can join us. Thanks for tuning in. I want to cover a few more headlines here, and then we're going to have an open discussion about a lot of the headlines that we've discussed today. If there's anything you'd like to add, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you up. But before we move on to our next headline, I want to take a quick look at your local weather. Today, no matter where you are in the world, you're probably going to step outside and notice some unusual clouds. And that's the weather for us. Back to you, Peter.
Right on. Excellent weather report. Excellent. I am in the production studio right now, so I can't look out a window right now. It's just, it could be anything. So I really appreciate you for updating me on the weather so I know what I should prepare myself or not prepare myself for when I go outside. And with that being said, let's talk about something in MusicWeek.com. And this one is Paul McCartney, Kate Bush, Noel Gallagher, Stevie Nicks, and a dozen more artists call on PM to fix streaming. Again, so these are in the show notes, links to the articles. You can find them at musicindustriescity.com. Click on the Clubhouse Information Center panel, and you can get the show notes there and links to all the articles. So dozens of artists, musicians, and songwriters have written to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, urging the government to address exploitation of creators in the streaming era. It follows the conclusion of the DCMS committee inquiry into the economics of streaming, which heard from labels, DSPs, trade bodies, artists, songwriters, and more. In a letter to the PM, 156 music makers, including Annie Lennox, Chris Martin, Paul McCartney, Robert Smith, Bob Geldof, Boy George, many others, have written, quote, on behalf of today's generation of artists, musicians, and songwriters here in the UK, in an unprecedented show of solidarity, they have asked him to update UK law to, quote, put the value of music back where it belongs, in the hands of music makers. So the article goes into a little more depth there. The letter coincides with the letter to the artist that, talking about from Apple Music, that on average it pays higher streaming royalty rate than rivals such as Spotify. Although Music Week has consistently reported there is no fixed streaming rate, but rather a market share system for dividing up DSP income. So this is going on. So they start bringing this, and then they have the letter there. So the letter issued today from the artist suggests that, quote, only 2 words need to change in the 1988 Copyright Designs and Patents Act so that today's performers receive a share of revenues just like they enjoy in radio. A change which, quote, won't cost the taxpayer a penny, but will put more money in the pockets of UK taxpayers and raise revenues for public services like the NHS, and which will contribute to the, quote, leveling up agenda as we kickstart the post-COVID economic recovery. All right, so it also recommends an immediate government referral to the Competition and Markets Authority because of evidence of multinational corporations wielding extraordinary power over the marketplace and the creation of an industry regulator. So it's a really in-depth article, and I know some people here might have checked that out. And there was the inquiry that was going on for a few months to the MPs in the UK about to analyze streaming. So it was an inquiry into the practices. And you can see a list of the full list letter and the list of signatories on this article in Music Week. Any thoughts on this? All right, moving on to the music biz is learning from the game sector, but needs more lessons on monetizing fans. So this comes from a media research. It was based on that from Mark Mulligan. They released a study, and it was really interesting. So this is based off of that. So this one is from themusicnetwork.com. In the last few years, the music business has been picking up tips from the gaming sector on its superior ways of monetizing fandoms. Virtual conference and gaming platforms are on the rise. Travis Scott pulled 27.7 million participants during his Fortnite in-game performance, and Roblox's first virtual conference by Lil Nas X in November 2020 generated 33 million views. A new report from Media Research suggests the biz has a long way to go in understanding just how fan monetizing has changed since streaming. With games revenue almost 4 times the size of the global music industry last year, Music and Gaming A New Way to Play said rather than just license music to games developers to enhance their experiences, music rights holders should change their approach to say they are not simply asking for a share of revenue, but an opportunity to actually grow game success. Quote, the real challenge for the music industry will be to reimagine and expand the way it currently participates in the gaming opportunity, building above and beyond sync and standard licensing, according to the report. Continuous music experiences games have also too often been focused on marketing and promotion for driving streams and ticket sales. To realize the full potential, music needs to become part of the game experience itself and thus tap audience demand and unlock in game spending, which is where the real money lies. And this is, they're saying, where the music industry as a whole needs to shift a thinking. And quote, the time is right to explore deals and strategies that are designed to be more native to gameplay environments, whether it be revenue share on in-game items or renting out digital real estate for a digital festival with the right to sell items inside the virtual festival environment. If the music industry wants to truly capitalize on the gaming opportunity, it needs to become part of it, not just settle for supplying it. So it goes on. It goes through some numbers. It talks about Tencent and Sony Group, corporation that invested another over $250 million into Epic Games. So there's a lot going on there. Any thoughts on gaming and music?
I think it's really interesting when we start to discuss how to gamify music or incorporate music and gaming into one all-encompassing experience. I think it's interesting that we see almost two different kinds of fans, two different kinds of experience seekers. We see the people who want to gamify and the people who want to be not gamified. They want to be less gamified. They want to disappear into the dark and pay cash at the door. And so it's just kind of interesting to me that the gamified experience, the crowd to me seems to be kind of split 50-50 about whether they want games to be part of their music. What do you guys think on the stage?
To game or not to game?
That is the question.
Yes.
I'm not saying a word.
You crack me up.
Right on.
Yeah, I think some people really like that, and some people, that's just not their thing. It's not my thing, so it's not something that I'm drawn to, but I can see it as a strategy working.
Well, the other thing,
why is it always the music industry that has to pivot? Like, maybe I'm missing the point, but if the gaming community would just pay the right amounts for the stuff they're using, and maybe it would be a more agreeable situation.
Oh, I agree with that too. That's true.
It seems like the gaming industry has more money than anybody. They get billions and billions of dollars, and they just don't want to share it with anybody, even the people that are helping them achieve this success. The games wouldn't. I'm not a gamer, so I can't really speak directly to it, but I just assume that the games wouldn't be as much of an experience for the gamer without the music that they're using, that the gaming industry is, using to make that experience so rich.
I think if you aren't an avid gamer, you probably have a different vision of what music in games experience is now. Whereas you have to remember that whole careers have been broken because some band got their song in FIFA or had their song debuted in Fortnite or had some kind of event on one of those games. I mean, it's literally the new way to sort of break an artist. And the beauty of it, while where if you have your song featured in a movie or a TV show, most people are really going to only consume that one time in one sitting at one event, maybe two or three times if they really love the film, but they're really by and large going to have a singular experience with it. Otherwise, it sort of fades into the background. But with a game, you could be returning to that entity for hours at a time, all day long, days and days on end, for months, and continue to keep being sort of, experiencing that music. So you'd have a much deeper sort of connection with it as spending visceral time with it than, say, for 2 hours during a film or for an hour or half an hour during a television show. It's a different kind of interaction with it. And I think there should be a different model for it all entirely. I don't think it should be the same as those things. And I agree, Elliot, that they should pay the artists considerably better for that very reason, because it's basically enhancing the experience.
Well, I don't even know if it's possible to pay them like with a, I'm sure we'll get to some Spotify news at some point, but with a Spotify-like model where they get paid per play or per minute, or I just don't know how viable those markets are.
Years ago, and I
I
can't
actually
go on.
I actually believe that it can be viable because you could look at like Fortnite skins as an example. So for like $2 to maybe $10, you can purchase various different little costumes. So like pertaining with an artist, you could do like in-game merch where you could be your favorite artist and you could wear their t-shirt or wear something from their brand, and people would pay for that. Like my son, every time he calls me, my older son doesn't live with me, and every time he calls me, Daddy, I'm Wolverine on Fortnite. Now I'm Spider-Man. Now I'm this person. And those are all skins that he's purchasing. Like when Travis Scott did the big concert on Fortnite, I think that kind of really set the tone to let people know that like this is a viable space. We just have to figure out how to make sense financially, because those skins, like I said, are 2 to let's say $10. Maybe a 50-50 profit share split will be good, because you're going to be using the artist likeness, but these creators in the game usually are the ones that are going to have to code everything, so I think that would be actually pretty fair.
That's an excellent point, Sin. And don't forget, the NFT space as we know it exists because of two worlds. One is the art world, in which blockchain technology is allowing artists and owners to be able to capitalize on their investment. And the other world is for these tokens that have been purchased for in-game use. That model is being trialed across so many different industries, but it was definitely pioneered and perfected in-game purchases for things like Sin's describing in games like Fortnite and FIFA and other things that come with a song or a skin or a likeness or whatever that you can then have in the game as part of your avatar or as part of your collection, that is really just a digital property that you now have ownership of, that you can either sell on sometime later or continue to use as a game's value.
This is,
Right.
I think that a lot of this is going to make some huge changes, in the way that we consume music and the way that we look at how to sync and the way that we look at placements. It's definitely going to make a change in a lot of things in the music industry.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring this back because I want to put this on tape because we do have one more article, which is your daily Spotify update, and then afterwards
hooray.
we can bring it back.
I knew it was out there somewhere.
It hits the spot, the Spotify spot. Before we get to that, though, I want to go ahead and invite everybody to raise your hand. If there's anything that we've discussed and you're in the audience, you'd like to raise your hand and come and join us on the stage, please just put your hand up. We'll be happy to bring you up. We would love to hear your comments, or if there's anything that we've forgotten to cover that you feel like should have been in the Music News Power Hour today, please go ahead and put those hands up, which means something different in here than it does at the club. But go ahead, hands up, and come on up and join us on the stage. Let's go ahead and take a look at our last headline, Peter.
Right, and what's the day without hearing something about Spotify? And well, this one is in joint with Facebook. And this comes from TechCrunch. And once again, all the articles are in our show notes at musicindustrycity.com. And you click on the Clubhouse Information Center graphic, and that'll take you to the show notes. And you can have all the links. We keep those links live for the entire week, so it all adds up by Friday for the week in review. We go through 40 to 50 articles, and we all have a great conversation about it. So this one is Spotify is sorry, I'm going to take two on that. Facebook is expanding Spotify partnership with new Boombox project. The article starts off as Facebook is deepening its relationship with the music company Spotify and will allow users to listen to music hosted on Spotify while browsing through its apps as part of the new initiative called Project Boombox, said Mark Zuckerberg on Monday. Facebook is building an inline audio player that will allow users to listen to songs or playlists being shared on the platforms without being externally linked to Spotify's app or website. Zuckerberg highlighted the feature as another product designed to improve the experience of creators on its platform, specifically the ability of musicians to share their work, basically making an audio first-class type of media, he said. We understand from sources familiar with Spotify, again, this is on TechCrunch, with the Spotify integration that this player will support both music and podcasts. It has already been tested in non-US markets, including Mexico and Thailand, and it's expected to arrive in about a week. All right, so this is goes on saying, "quote We think that audio is going to be a first-class medium, and that there are these different products to be built across the whole spectrum," said Zuckerberg. Continues, "Of course, it includes some areas that have been, popular recently, like podcasting and kind of live audio rooms like this. But I also think that there's some interesting things that underexplored in the area overall." Spotify has already supported a fairly productive relationship with the Facebook and Instagram platforms. In recent years, the music and podcast platform has been integrated more deeply into Instagram stories, where users can share content from the service, a feature that's also been available in Facebook stories. And that is it for the headlines. Let's go and open up the round table here and just get some people's thoughts on everything.
I just want to start by saying that I'm glad the boombox isn't called Music Thing.
Like the car thing. Hey, car. I think we came to the conclusion that what was it? Somebody.
It was like a working title that
Yeah,
just stuck because
like
they didn't have time to come up with a different one, maybe.
Yeah, they're like in the Facebook cafeteria, and he's like, "Oh, what are you working on?" He's like, "Oh, I'm working on this car thing," and it's like, I can't really talk about it.
I'm working on metrics. What are you working on? Ah, that car thing.
Yeah.
I
So
have used Boombox because it's been tested here, and I just thought, to be quite honest, I didn't know that it wasn't available everywhere. I thought it was just part of a new Facebook update. But belong to an album listening club that listens to one album a week on a Monday night all together, and all of the guys in the group with me have all commented that using it made it a lot easier, because the point of our club is to all sit and listen at the same time. And unless you own a copy of the album we're listening to, we would all be listening on Spotify and having to sort of go back and forth between the Spotify app and Facebook to be able to make comments in real time on what we were listening to. It made it a lot easier. And I can imagine a whole lot of other instances when that upgrade would be helpful, because for those of us who are very immersed, if we're sharing music, or we're having a conversation about music, it not having to not leave the app is really helpful.
So what is it like? You could be almost like a DJ, or it's like, can other people, like, it just pulls from your Spotify a playlist, or you can add songs and say, I'm going to play this and talk over them?
It, as far as I understand it, I mean, unless what I'm imagining or what I'm experiencing is not actually this, it's not like something came up and said, "Welcome to Boombox." Like, it just sort of happened one day in my Facebook, and it just sort of puts the controls for Spotify at the bottom of your sort of Facebook page that you're on, whether you're making a comment or posting on somebody's wall or whatever it is, so that you're not actually, when you click on a Facebook or on a Spotify link on Facebook, it opens your Spotify, right? I mean, that's what happens to everybody. So what this does is it kind of keeps you in Facebook, but gives you the controls for Spotify so that you're not actually leaving the space. So I think the idea is so that you can continue to enjoy both things without having to flip flop between the apps. And for our purposes, it's terrific. If there's other things coming lately, I haven't tried it out, but I can try later on tonight if you'd like, and report back tomorrow.
You had the inside scoop on everything today, Angela. I love it. I love it. Wayne, I see your mic is open. Did you want to share a comment with us? It's good to see you.
Yeah, I just this is making me cringe. I I can already see the all the accessibility nightmares that are going to come from two platforms that have always been pretty lackadaisical about accessibility. So this will be very interesting. As a blind musician, I'm glad that I canceled my Spotify subscription as soon as Apple Music came out. So I don't know. You guys will have to let me know how clean it looks and everything. It'll be interesting. I bet there's going to be a lot of blind people complaining about not being able to use it.
I'm imagining there's probably going to be some problems with the crosstalk between the platforms, at least at some point, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But Angela's going to let us know, though, because she has the inside scoop. She's our source. She's going to get us Boombox information here and let us know how it works.
I want to know, Wayne, what is the difference between the experience between what makes Apple Music's interface or experience better than Spotify's in your circumstance? Like, what is it that makes it different?
Wayne, I think your mic's muted.
Oh, it was muted. That's
There we
weird.
go. There you are.
Okay. So Apple has like a very specific way of coding things across all of their apps. They try to make everything, if you guys look at any of their stuff, I mean, there's always these tabs on the bottom, and there's the list of different items under each tab. So everything is very predictable with the way Apple codes things. And so that in turn they already know, because they designed the screen reader that works for the iPhone and the iPad, Apple Watch, and Mac. So they all of their apps are innately coded to be accessible because of their APIs and stuff. So the thing with Spotify is that sometimes I mean, I haven't been on for years, but back in the day when I was using Spotify, it looked pretty good on the iPhone and you could get around. Sometimes when you would go into the Discover tab, it would jump. So like if you were trying to look at an album or get more information about an album before you actually listen to it, you try to focus your cursor on the album, and then it would jump you back to the top of the list. So that was really annoying, especially if you were like 50 or 60 albums in
Yeah, I mean the
and found this thing.
interfaces. Yeah, the interfaces were massively different, and like searching. I always found
Yeah,
searching, and especially like in classical or jazz music, is very difficult on any of the platforms. I mean, except for like the ones
it
that
can be.
tailored more
Yeah,
to
for
it. I mean,
sure.
RDO had the best interface, but RDO unfortunately didn't last. One of my things that I look at here with this integration, and not many people remember that when 2010 rolled around, you know, you had to link your Facebook account to Spotify, and that was a huge
I remember
thing.
that.
And that was so the thing. What happened there is like everything was kind of locked in together. And we were already having these concerns. There was already people saying, like, what does this mean for the future? And now we look at what Spotify has been doing for the last, for years now, and it's also with podcasts, and they also have video in there, and they've been testing out different areas. And we look at what Facebook's doing now. Facebook isn't just rolling this out. I mean, they're talking about voice notes, and they're talking about their Clubhouse, which is some of it rolled out yesterday, some is rolling out by this summer, all this stuff, and now we're integrating it. And if Facebook was to actually put music in there, like if what they're doing with Spotify, and I think this also ties in a little bit with what we were talking about earlier with Live Nation, is saying, if Facebook is this a way around Facebook antitrust? Because if they allow Spotify in there and what everything with Spotify podcasts, Spotify music streaming, they allow that connection to happen, that is not a Spotify company. So Spotify can have their Oculus, they can have their VR, they can have their social platform, they can try to do an
Car
audio
thing.
only, and Spotify has the car thing, and Spotify has the podcast. So is this also Facebook saying, like, a big finger to Apple saying, nah, we're gonna work together with this other company, we're not going to get antitrust, and we're going to be able to do something. And finally, on that thought, is Spotify is merging services in its umbrella, whereas Apple split podcasting from Apple Music. Was that a mistake on Apple's part by splitting it?
No, it made it easier.
I like them
Easier to deal
separate.
with.
I like them separate. Because I don't see podcasts and music in the same wheelhouse at all. Those are different
Me
things to
neither.
me.
Mm-mm.
Podcasts to me are more like almost like audiobooks. Like I feel like I'm hearing stories. I'm hearing, linear discussion. I'm hearing comedy. I'm hearing those are the music is music. So I don't, even though I'm using my ears in both cases, I don't put them in the same category at all.
Or you're discovering 10 minutes of catchy new songs every week,
I prefer them to be separate as well because I don't classify them in the same category. For me, it's almost like the difference between listening to a record and listening to the radio, and I wouldn't want to have to sift through everything on the radio to get through my record collection or vice versa, and I don't want to have to sift through music to get to podcasts or vice versa. I want to find what I want to find. I like them separate.
Same.
I too like them separate, and I will say that I am, you know, I'm kind of an Apple fanboy, but I despise the music app on the phone. I can't, I just can't get past the interface, and I don't use their podcast app. I use a separate podcast app and a separate app to view my music library on the phone. It does access the same music database, but it's basically a skin that views my music library differently because I just can't deal with the Apple apps.
All right. Hey, Victoria, you raised your hand. Was there? Welcome to the stage. Is there something you wanted to chime in on the topic?
Yeah, I guess I'm the dark horse of the room because I kind of enjoy being able to access podcasts from Spotify. I kind of like the accessibility of being able to listen to, either some sort of session on the podcast side or my music on the Spotify side. It's easily accessible from my desktop when I'm working. Like I'm literally looking at it right now. And like the only thing I'd say my complaint is about having podcasts, like they have their own little separate corner of Spotify and they're not integrated well. If you try and scroll through the podcasts, like if you go into the music business podcast and you try and scroll down and you want to start from the beginning from years ago, like it gets very glitchy at some point. So I could imagine that if Spotify invested more time, effort, and possibly money into developing their podcast side, it could be more user friendly for those users like me who just enjoy the easy accessibility. Like Spotify has integrated with Google Maps, so like you can control it from your maps while you're driving your car. Like I am one of those users who enjoy like being able to kind of do it all from one platform versus having like several different apps.
I love that you came up here to say that, even though you say you're the dark horse and maybe you felt like that would be an unpopular opinion. But I really respect you coming up here and saying that because that's the purpose of all of those services coming together. That integration is convenience, and if it's convenience that works, I love hearing a success story about integrating. So please don't call yourself the dark horse. I love that you came up here to share that with us.
I like integration on a user standpoint, but let's talk about this type of integration from a creator standpoint. This is I would love to see a more in-depth research on these analytics, but what I can say, and I've spoken to other podcasters as well, because I have two podcasts, one Music Industry City, one Stories from the Run. Both of them are on numerous platforms. The ones that really matter are Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Now, when I look at my drop off, okay, so over the hour or whatever, I say, okay, what percentage is dropping off, which is natural. When I compare Apple to Spotify, Spotify has more drop-offs more quickly than Apple Podcasts. My presumption is that the reason there's more drop-off on Spotify is because there's more things offered on Spotify. When you are in the Apple Podcast ecosystem, you're on the app, it's single app, you might go to other podcasts, but you aren't tempted to go find music while you're listening to the podcast and search, or somebody pings you. It's like, here, like go take a look at this, or like I'm going to start searching and feel like, oh, I feel like listening to a song right now. You're really in that app, as opposed to where Spotify, you can be scrolling through. It's like, all right, I'm listening to this, but oh wait, yeah, it's New Music Friday and I forgot. And so I find that it might be, and I would love to see a study on this. Is there more? Are you less sticky as a podcast creator on Spotify than if you are on Apple?
Ooh, now that's interesting. I really like that question. I would definitely be interested to hear any thoughts on that. And as we go into that, I wanted to ask if anybody has any thoughts on any of the other articles that we've covered today. There have been a lot of headlines. We saw a guilty plea from an insurrectionist and musician. We saw Morrissey's manager and some scuttlebutt over a Simpsons character. We see socially non-distanced festival being tried out in the UK, and then also some conversations about whether or not that's safe in other spots. So I'm wondering if anybody has any final thoughts as we wrap up the Music News Power Hour here in the next few minutes. We've covered a lot of articles, and I love talking about Spotify, but I don't want the big green dot to hog the whole spot. So is there any other thoughts on our headlines? Anybody?
Hey guys, I wanted to jump in with kind of a connecting thread. I think that when we look at consumer psychology and music, the easier it is for consumers to listen to the music, the more separated it's become from the actual purchasing moment. So, like, if you're on YouTube, you just click play, you're not paying for anything. If you're on Spotify, you've got your credit card set up to auto pay for it. You're not accustomed to directly paying for music anymore the way that you were when you were going to a record store and buying the vinyl or buying a CD. And that separation, I think, is why you see people not putting as much investment into the music side specifically. So when you're at a show, for example, you've already bought the ticket, your wallet is open, your wallet is out for dinner, your wallet is out at the merch table. It's a different environment. And I think that that wallet open environment exists in gaming in a unique way that, like, maybe as Sin was saying, you can monetize that differently than any of these other music apps possibly could, because people are so accustomed to just not paying for music anymore.
I think that's a great point, Jordan. And one of my colleagues said that when it comes to trying to gamify music, there's going to be an interesting clash of two worlds because the music fan is used to, clicking. Oh, we're going to subscribe or tier bits. My credit card or my Apple Pay is already hooked up. Just click, no problem. And the gaming universe is very different. Gamers are used to paying for their intellectual property. It's as I understand, I'm not a gamer myself, but it's very unusual for games to be free or here you can just have this. Games have value and gamers are used to paying, and so we might see, my colleague was saying, a clash of two worlds when we try to gamify music, the world of people who are used to just consuming without consciously purchasing, and the people who are very accustomed to paying for the intellectual property they want to enjoy.
Don't forget, there was a time, I don't know, I'm assuming that we're all, remembering the era of when Apple Music was first available, that we used to be able to stream 30 seconds of a song before we could buy it, pay 99 cents or whatever it was for the whole song for singles when they were trialing that model. And they were doing everything they could to get rid of it because it was as frustrating as that. Like you say, Jordan, that moment of, oh, I've got to, if I want to stream this, if I want to continue to listen to this, I've got to stop what I'm doing, get my credit card, enter the information, go through two or three things, and then I don't want to listen to it anymore at that stage. I'm done. Because we've basically taught the consumer the Kazaa and LimeWire and Napster era taught the consumer that you should be able to just click and you'll hear the music. Whereas as soon as you interrupted that, it became a problem.
And remember that when Apple, had it was originally 30 seconds, and because they still had to pay, even though it was a 30-second clip, they still had to pay a licensing to have that actual clip paid.
Yep.
Then they said, we're going to make it 90 seconds. And they just made that announcement, and Apple being Apple, because Steve Jobs saved the music industry with the iPod and iTunes. And he said, all right, the preview is going to be 90 seconds and we're not going to pay you any more per clip or anything like that. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to have your music up here. So deal with it.
What a gut punch, truly, as an artist. What a gut punch that would be. I know we've had a lot of great conversations here today, but I do want to start wrapping up with this is the Music News Power Hour. We are here noon to 1 p.m. each weekday, Monday through Friday. That is noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. So please do tune in and join us, not just here on Clubhouse for iOS, but also on streaming platforms. We are live. So if you're not on Clubhouse, you can still join us for the Music News Power Hour, weekdays 12 to 1 Eastern. You can visit musicindustrycity.com to check out our show notes and also read the full articles that we've referenced today in the show. If there's something you'd like to learn more about, please visit musicindustrycity.com and check out our Clubhouse notes. You can see all of our links and our articles there. And we want to invite you to ping your friends in as you join us here in the Music News Power Hour. We will see you right back here tomorrow 12 to 1. We hope you'll join us each weekday. We're going to cover all the headlines in the news that you actually want to hear about and discuss. We know there are a lot that you don't. We try to keep it cool in here. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Eli Window for my co-host Peter Schwing. We appreciate you joining in our discussion, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Great conversation today, and we'll
Thanks,
see
Peter
you
and Eli.
tomorrow. Have a good one. Peace out.
Great to see you.